trauma transformation coach that didn't have any idea that I'd actually experienced trauma. I thought my life was really, really normal. I didn't think I'd been through any childhood trauma, abuse, anything. When I was struggling as an adult in my 30s, I thought it was because I was a complete waste of space. It's because there's something wrong with me. I never thought something bad actually happened to me.
Welcome to the Brown Girl Rising podcast, where authenticity meets empowerment. I'm Urvashi, your host and your guide on this journey of elevating voices, sharing stories, and navigating the journey of resilience. So, let's dive in. Hey guys, welcome to the Brown Girl Rising podcast. Today I'm super excited because I have got Manpreet Johal Bernie. Manpreet is somebody who I've met over the last couple of months and she is incredible. She is a trauma transformation coach and mentor. She's also a podcast host on the Heart's Happiness podcast. And Manpreet helps you reparent your inner child and break the cycle of toxicity. Having been through trauma herself, Manpreet now helps people transform their stories regardless of whatever the trauma is and find their own version of happiness. I am so excited to have you here today. How are you, Manpreet?
I'm great. What a wonderful bio. That's just a lovely introduction. Thank you so much. Yeah, that's what I do because I can never remember how to say it. So thanks.
There you go. That is what you do. I'll send it to you. How about that?
Thank you. Thank you. That is what I do. It's just so lovely to be here and to be chatting to you again. I love talking to you and talking about all the deeper things. So Thank you so much for having me.
We're definitely going to get deep today, but let's start with my first question. What does it mean to you to be unlimited?
Oh, I wish I knew this earlier because I would have really thought about it. But I think for me, to be unlimited is to be that higher self version of me, the one that believes that she can do anything, that she is limitless in her potential, that she doesn't let fear or limited self-belief hold her back. So that version of me, that higher self version of me, she's somebody that is an advocate for breaking cycles of trauma. She is speaking on stages. She is sharing her message. She is changing people's lives. And for me, that is that version of me. And that's always what I'm inspiring every year to get closer and closer to her.
I love that. I love that. So look, Manpreet, we met, God, I don't even know now. It was at Sana's event a while ago now. Was it April? Okay.
Yep.
And it was the first time I met you, the first time I heard your story. And I was one of two things, blown away and completely like crying. So for those people who don't know your story, can you've been through a lot, right now you help people reparent their inner child. You've been through a lot as a child and as a young adult growing up yourself. Can you tell us a quick synopsis of kind of your own story before we dive in?
Yeah, sure. So I'm a trauma transformation coach that didn't have any idea that I'd actually experienced trauma. I thought my life was really, really normal. I didn't think I'd been through any childhood trauma, abuse, anything. I just didn't. When I was struggling as an adult in my 30s, I thought it was because I was a complete waste of space. It's because there's something wrong with me. I never thought something bad actually happened to me, which is part of the reason why I talk about this so much, because so many of us don't realize we've actually experienced trauma. So I had no idea. I lost my dad to suicide when I was 26. So it's quite a while ago now because I'm 41. And when I lost him, I was like, okay, well, this is really shit. But when I lost him, I was like, okay, this is really awful. I'd already known I'd lost my grandma to suicide at this point already and other family members. So I was like, this is going to be hard, but I'd had such a difficult relationship with my dad. He was somebody that struggled with his own traumas. He'd grown up in an abusive household. So he was very angry. He was quite narcissistic at times. He would drink too much. He was very abusive to my mum. He's very emotionally abusive to us. So my life with him was just really, really difficult. So I thought, oh, he's died now. So great, my life can get better. That's what I thought. Even though I completely ignored the beautiful parts of who he was and just really was like, well, there was this dark person that he was and now he's not there, and he'd been such a absolute nightmare to live with that I was like, okay, well, I'm going to be fine now. And actually I couldn't be further from the truth, because now my dad, I didn't realize to this point, I was living to please that man and make him happy. Like I was doing the career he wanted me to do. I went into IT. I did all the subjects he wanted to do. So when he's gone, I don't have a reason to live anymore, because I was living to please him.
Wow, that's deep.
Yeah, and then I really started to struggle with my own mental and emotional well-being. I started to try to deal with my grief with alcohol, with going out, with people pleasing, with helping everybody, with being very, very busy. I would be chasing after super unavailable men. So whether they had addictions, whether they had other relationships, they were the people that I was really into. My friends were all getting married and having babies, and I was just, like a teenager, just pining after someone I couldn't have.
Mm.
And it was just getting worse and worse and worse. And I'd fallen in love with somebody that was particularly rejecting to me. And I sort of just faced myself at like 35, I think I was. And I was like, I've got to take control of my life because I actually really don't want to live. So how am I different to my dad? What's going on for me? And that's when I went on my own healing journey. So I think I probably started about 2015, where I started to explore like what's going on here. So first of all, it started with podcasts and blogs and lots of free content in the world. And then it started to go more deeper into therapy. I realized that I actually had complex PTSD. So that is a version of PTSD. So when you've had so many moments of unsafety as a child, it adds up to complex PTSD. And that's what I had. I was in a state of survival. That's why I was going after these men. That's why I was numbing with things like alcohol and work. And it pointed to the earlier years of my life from 0 to 7. I lived with my alcoholic granddad. I lost my grandma very, very young. My dad was normal at the beginning. Then he really started to spin out with his grief, and he became a difficult man to live with. My parents' relationship was very turbulent. There was like marital rape, and there was all kinds of abuse that was going on there, but nobody in the outside world knew. Like nobody knew. Like my dad never hit me, he never hit any of us, but he was very aggressive and emotionally abusive, controlling. He would like hold my money, take my money away from me, all sorts of things. And I was almost in denial of all of this that had happened until I got into those spaces, and I was like, oh my God, something's actually happened to me. There's a reason why I'm like this. I'm not just a complete like fuck up of a human with like really bad taste in men. There's actually a pattern playing out here. So that's when I started to learn modalities to help me to heal, learn how to reparent my inner child, learn how to love myself, and do all of that deep inner work, that I was able to shift and break the patterns. So, for example, for me, men was a big one, because having such an emotionally unavailable dad was a pattern that I just kept repeating. But by like repairing the parts of me that were, missing my emotionally unavailable dad, was searching for my dad in all of these wrong men, I was able to really take care of her. And the minute that I really did that deeper healing, I grieved him too. I grieved the childhood I had with him, that then I was able to find a healthier kind of love. And that's when I met my husband at 37, and then we got married 40. So yeah, I managed to completely break that cycle. And I think once I'd done that, and I was like, oh my God, you can actually change this. It's like, why don't more people talk about this? Oh, I'll start a podcast and I'll start sharing my story. So that's how Heart's Happiness began, was just me sharing the story of all those realizations and bringing on some of the people that helped me on my journey. That's how the podcast began. And then I started to get people contact me on social media going, I've got the exact same problem as you. Could you please help me? So I started to teach it as a course, and then I trained in the modalities that help me, that are like trauma release techniques. And yeah, so my whole thing is we can transform our stories no matter the traumas that have happened to us. We just need to do that kind of inner work. We can't keep running from it. We have to face it and take responsibility for our lives. So yeah, I guess that's my story.
Wow. Right. Thanks, guys. That's it. Done. I mean, I'm joking. I mean, your story is insane. You mentioned a lot in that. Wow, your story is completely insane. I can't relate to all of it, but there are parts of that I can definitely relate to. Something that you said earlier was like, obviously, your dad committed suicide. He was abusive, he was angry, and he was a narcissist. How does a child, or how does anyone realize their parent is a narcissist?
Well, I didn't had that language when I was a child. I
Sure.
didn't even know that was a thing. And even now, like he had lots of narcissistic traits, but he had lots of codependent ones as well. So
Mm.
where he was quite controlling, everything was about his needs. For anybody listening, that's really a very big narcissistic thing. It's all about them. They're very controlling. They are looking for like people to make them feel better. They sort of look to others to take their energy almost so they can feel better. They are like the centers of their own world. They're more like that persecutor, angry fighter kind of energy. The abuser, that kind of much stronger thing. Like they gaslight you, they deny your reality. They will put you down, they will do those things to make themselves feel better. But the reason why anybody is a narcissist is because they are suffering with trauma themselves, and that is a way that they've learned to survive. So we really give, like, obviously what narcissists do is absolutely awful to people, but they are traumatized beings, and that is why they're being like that. But then what I learned as a small child is to become the people pleaser, the codependent, which is the opposite side of the spectrum, which is I give my dad what he needs emotionally, whatever. I'd be the good girl, do the subjects he wants, I'll go to the university he wants. I even was on track to marry the man he wanted me to marry, just to please him, to make him happy. But then actually he doesn't ever have to deal with his shit, because he has a whole family that is just like, we really need to make sure he's okay. So in a way, obviously I didn't know this consciously, but there was a lot of enabling of him.
Yeah.
My mum, she massively enabled him because she didn't have the tools to do anything else, really. So that's that narcissistic energy. It can be very much about him. But what I find really interesting about my dad was he was very much a Jekyll and Hyde. So he could be the narcissist, but he could be the codependent. He could be loving, kind, warm, spiritual. He could be many other things too, which I think sometimes confused me, because I didn't know who I was going to get. Like I could get, like, my dad was much more loving than my mum, and I could get him, that dad, or I could get the really evil one. And my granddad was really, really similar as well. So my dad had really picked that up. So when I'm emotionally dysregulated, I turn into this monster.
Wow.
Because that's what he'd grown up with, whereas I'd learned from my mum to be much more submissive. So and that's not great when you are getting older and you're having relationships with men, or even in friendships. I've had, very manipulative relationships with women as well. I've been gaslit by women. I've been, like abused by them, been blamed and shamed for their emotions, because that's that narcissistic way. But I didn't realize that wasn't normal. I just thought that was just, it was my fault. So
yeah. I've been there, Manpreet. I've been in relationships with females where I've actually been completely manipulated and completely because of their narcissism, like things like, oh, can you do this for me? And for some reason I would say yes, and I didn't realize what was going on.
Oh yeah,
and when I decided to put myself first, I was wrong. I was the bad person. I wasn't a good friend anymore,
Yes.
Obviously, me being me at the age of 39 blocked certain people out of my life, and I was like, I'm done. Like, I don't deserve this. I'm much better than that.
Well done, you taking care of you.
Thanks so much, man. So really nice to hear that.
Because I've had similar as well. When I was in a bad place and I was doing everything for everyone, those certain personalities are fine with it. But when you are like learning how to love and take care of yourself, having boundaries, saying no, they don't like it, because you're not a person to be abused anymore. So and they get that energy, they regulate from you. So when you're not there as that energy source, then again they have to deal with their own emotions.
Yeah, that's true. Because I know some people who thrive off being the loving, kind person if someone's in a bad place. But then when you're in a really good place and you're healing and you're on this journey,
Yeah,
they don't like it. They don't like it.
No,
They have
and then
no need. Yeah, they don't feel useful. I
no,
don't know.
and also what I noticed as well with these kind of personalities is then the little subtle comments would come in as well, like the little subtle put downs would kind of come in. So I've now got a relationship. It would be like little comments about my relationship or little comments about my body. So even though you're doing better and you're getting better, you start to notice the language that they use to actually oppress you. It's really very toxic. And they're in our, like, you know, at the end of the day, that narcissistic personality is in our families, it's in our workplaces, it's everywhere. It's a trauma response, and it's what the way they're surviving, but what they are actually doing is creating more trauma in people. So but we have the power to stop letting them. So for you at 39, the tool that you had was blocking.
Yep.
And that's like what you do. And I've done that before. I've blocked someone myself because I was like, I can't handle this anymore. I didn't have the tools I have now to be able to maybe communicate that in a different way. But well done, you did it to survive.
So let's talk about that. So you said that you lost your identity kind of when your father died. You didn't know who you were. You didn't know what your purpose was. You thought you were a bit of a waste of space. Now, and then you went on your healing journey. So what kind of modalities did you use to bring you back to yourself, to bring you back to homeostasis?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. So I started to realize that the nervous system was the thing that was keeping me sort of repeating these sort of situations. So I really went down that somatic route. So I did a lot of somatic therapy, which really brings the body into the therapy room. So in the old days, I did do a bit of dabbling of counseling. It didn't really do anything for me though. Whereas this was really starting to bring my body into the mix as well. So that's the thing, that's that brake system that's like, oh, you can't be with a healthy man. It's not safe. I'll end that. And I used to do that as well. I didn't used to just chase unavailable. And if somebody that was unavailable became available, wanted to be with me, but then I would be like, oh, I'm not interested anymore. So I would flip the other way as well, because the nervous didn't feel safe. So this is the kind of things I explored in my somatic therapy, and we went through all of my childhood. And actually it was 5 years I was in that therapy room, really going in deep into the somatic release work. And then I did things like craniosacral therapy because my body was very exhausted from the releasing. So I started to bring other modalities like Reiki, craniosacral therapy, EFT tapping was a big part of my journey. So in the beginning, that's kind of the things I did. So real trauma release techniques to help me to release it from the body, using things like breath work. Over time, I've trying to remember the earlier ones because I have different ones in my toolkit now. But yeah, that's where it really started with, like, looking at ways to release the trauma from the body, because that was the thing that was keeping me stuck as well. I could understand something in my mind, like when I read a book, I was like, okay. So by the way, the pattern I was in of survival is called love addiction, love avoidance.
Wow. Okay.
It's called, and when you abstain completely, it can be called like love anorexia. And these 3 things I was doing, so I understood that in my brain. I was like, okay, this is the pattern that I'm in. But then I couldn't stop myself. Like I was addicted to these people. So then it was like the body work is what allowed me to unravel that addiction.
Oh, wow. So can you tell us what a love addiction and love anorexia are? Because I've never heard of these terms before.
Yeah, of course. So love addiction is, so actually, you know, like how we have Alcoholic Anonymous, we actually have a group that supports love addicts, love avoidance. And, you know, so these people that are...
Oh, wow.
So I used to go to them sometimes. So love addiction is when we are, I guess, like, imagine being addicted to, rather than a substance, addicted to a person.
Okay.
So you're obsessed with them. You can't take care of your body anymore. You don't take care of yourself. You think about them all the time. You're obsessing over them. You're chasing after them. That kind of thing. It's like very obsessive. That is the kind of pattern for love addiction. And then we have love avoidance, which is we will run from relationships. So we will get close, but we're afraid to be close, so we sort of run away from them. So these 3 things are intimacy disorders. So intimacy stands for into me you see, and love avoidance, love anorexia, and love addiction are all ways that we can actually unconsciously sort of not let people in. So at the end of the day, when I'm chasing Mr. Unavailable, he's not giving me any love. He's not coming to see me. He's not marrying me. He's not doing all those things. Now, how is that protecting me? I'm a young girl that doesn't believe any man is safe.
Yeah.
Who the way that survived her childhood was through a fantasy of like Cinderella and all of these things, like the fairy tale, right? So I can be in that with that a love addiction. So I'm safe, but it's causing me pain. It's just like an alcoholic when they're drinking their alcohol, it's numbing the pain, but it's painful still.
Yeah.
And that's what addiction is like, because you're not really getting your needs met. And then we can go into love avoidance, which is the opposite almost. Like, so we're running, we want to be close, but we can't, and we run. And we can play lots of games with that. And then love anorexia, which is just the complete abstaining. So just being alone. Like I think I was not near any men for like 6 years or something.
Yeah.
So these are different ways in which they're survival patterns, but actually they're the way that we're just trying to keep ourselves safe. So it took a lot of healing work to be able to resolve these patterns. And if I could do it, anybody could do it.
Yeah, it sounds like it, but it also sounds like just the dating game, if I'm honest with you. It sounds like, that whole push-pull of that chase, and then you get that person and you're like, actually, I don't want that person. Someone can see what you've just said with love avoidance, love addiction, love anorexia as just being normal. So how does someone know if they're actually in one of those three states, or they're just in the dating game?
Yeah, I would say, is it a repeated pattern? So like, this is a pattern that I've been doing since I was young, like 20s. So this is a repeated pattern of behavior. So but I used to look at my friends who are much more healthier, had much better upbringings than me, and they might like someone, they might not, they might not be that invested, they might not. And then they will be like a really great guy and they're not going to run from that guy. Whereas I would go into love avoidance when a great guy wanted to be with me. So it's really slowing down and noticing your patterns of behavior. It's very linked to attachment trauma as well. So we have an insecure attachment, and so many of us are running around in the dating world with attachment wounding from childhood. So that's playing out too. But yeah, you might be running after somebody. You might be caught in a loop with someone that's an avoidant, and you're having that addictive behavior where you can't stop thinking about them. They are literally like, your alcoholic drink, they're your substance. So it's kind of really knowing that it's like, is that person stopping you from taking care of yourself? And again, like you say, the dating game, but that's not healthy. None of that's healthy. That's, extreme behaviors. Like, we can be like, oh, I'm not really feeling this, or this is what I really want. So one of the things I did to cure this, actually, which I do with my clients, is I actually have a spreadsheet which has green flags, red flags on it. And I literally scored the men that I was involved with before I started doing this work. And they had so many red flags that they were like minus thousands. And when I actually started to date my husband, I filled him in, and he was the first man that actually had an acceptable score. So, when I was doing this chase, pull, blah, 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 it was because so many red flags were there, so many things that was activating me by their personality, which is part of the reason why I'm running. So for everybody listening, like, really, if you're dating, think about, what do you want in someone, and what are those red flags? Because you could be unconsciously chasing after someone that feels like one of your parents' wounds.
Yeah. So I'm single right now, and I'm actually pretty happily single for the first time in, I would say, forever, because I feel like what you're saying and what you're talking about is, maybe I've had love addiction 100%. I've been there, I've been chasing the guy. That's like, I don't know if that's my fiery nature, but it sounds like it must be something like love addiction. But right now, you say love anorexia, but I would say that I'm in a place where I'm actually looking after myself. I'm really happy. And, someone could say that's love anorexia, right? Or not? Is that completely wrong?
Yeah. So again, it's like, we'd have to have like chat about this and look at your whole pattern of behavior. So I'll tell you something about me. When I was in the space of no man, I'm a lot better. I came up with a business idea then. I'm taking better care of myself. I've lost weight. I'm healthier. I'm doing really, really, really well. Like, I'm much better in that state. The minute a man comes into town, all of that goes out the window.
Okay.
So that's like, that's the difference. Like it wasn't, and whereas that's how it used to be. But then when I was doing this work, and I'm sure because you've done lots of work on yourself, I was like really loving getting to know myself, really loving traveling with myself, really loving going on a date with myself. I was exuding the energy of like that self-love, and it was very different to avoid, like I don't trust myself with men, so I'm like I'm just turned off to that right now. Like it's not safe for me to fall in love. It was a bit of a different kind of energy. And then to go from the intention of, okay, I want to find love, but I want to find love from like that healthy love, that love that's really good for me. And I want to say as well that when I met my husband, it wasn't like I was cured of all of this. It was still there. So when I was with, in the early days, and he's amazing, I wanted to run from him about 1,000 times. So I had to really do the work. I had to get back, I had to do therapy. I had to look at my spreadsheet. I had to like talk to him about my fears to be able to stay.
Yeah.
So it took work.
Yeah, so you're a very conscious woman. Would you say that he is a very conscious man, and that him maybe being conscious what kept you staying instead of running?
Yeah. So my husband is not a spiritual person. He
Okay.
he doesn't, he's like, he's so supportive of me, but he's not like done loads of work on himself. But he's very deep in the sense of he is very self-aware. So and very regulated. He's a healthy masculine.
Okay.
Right? I wasn't with the healthy masculines before. He's a very healthy masculine. He's like wants to be a provider. He wants to be strong. He wants to protect me, but he wants me to be me as well. So his energy is very different to what I was used to. So when I want to run, I want to sabotage, I want to be all crazy. Like he is not had the same, he's not had, we're from different backgrounds. He's not had the same kind of traumas as me. He's a lot more stable because of that reason. And so when I'm like, so yeah, I think we should break up because of, I can't remember what I used to say. And he'd be like, I'm hearing what you're saying, but I don't feel like that's a reason to break up. Like, I think that's something that we should talk about. So yeah, he was very much like that. And that's what really really helped our relationship, because he was like safe and someone I could like nurture that new way of being, because I've never had a healthy man in my life apart from my like gay best friend. Like nobody else. So to have that with him, and so in that sense he's like very conscious, very aware, very sensible, very grounded, but he's not like us, on our path. He's not
on our
like
woo-woo path. Yeah, exactly. So you mentioned cultural backgrounds. I want to go back to that actually. Do you think that this trauma that a lot of us are facing is a cultural thing? Because you're right, like when we meet my white friends, if I'm honest with you, they don't have the trauma that most of my Indian girlfriends or Indian male friends do. So do you think there's a massive cultural impact on trauma?
Yeah, so I think basically trauma does affect all of us. Let's look at the history of the world. Like there's been wars and affecting every kind of color that you can think of. But I do think those of us that have been marginalized, due to colonization, we've had trauma in different kind of ways. So I have lots of clients that are from a white background, and they have had a very similar childhood to me. So therefore they have, they're manifesting in the same way as I was. So like they had daddy issues, or they had like, there was abuse in the house, and that's because of things to do with their background. So it could be that there wasn't a lot of money, or maybe that I have a lot of American clients, so they might have come from parts of Europe where there was a lot of war and they've come over. So I do see it in everybody, but I would say for those of us from our backgrounds, we're coming from a lot more, there's that historical trauma that's gone back a very, very long time. So for example, where I'm from, my ancestors are from is from Punjab, and there's just so much trauma, so much, like Sikhs haven't been allowed to be Sikhs, like at the end of the day, and that comes through that our lineage. And Simon doesn't have that. He has stuff, and his family has stuff, but it's not the same as mine. But then some other, people that I know, clients that I know that are not from a cult, our same cultural background, but they struggle with it too. But I think we have a lot of it because we've got that background, and then we've got a lot of like pretending that it's not there, and a lot of staying in abusive situations, and there's a lot of things that are taking a while to shed from our cultures and our societies. So I definitely more complicated.
Yeah, definitely more complicated. And a lot of that staying in relationships thing is definitely, I think, a cultural thing, because divorce wasn't a word in the Indian culture or whatever. You just didn't get divorced, you just kind of dealt with it. And I've heard stories of girls getting married into families and she's being abused, but the parents are like, deal with it. We married you, you can't leave. That's gonna be like, you're gonna cut our noses off. And I don't know what that saying is, but they'd have that kind of a yeah, exactly. Can we talk about that? Because you did talk about that at the event. So
so my mum, when I was 2 years old, she tried to leave her marriage, and it wasn't so bad with my dad then, but she was raising her baby in a home which wasn't safe with an alcoholic, and she left, and she was pretty much told, sorry, you're not allowed to come home, go back. And then my brother was born, and after my dad's parents died, he got so much worse, and never was she allowed to come home, never was she allowed to keep her children safe. Like, she just did not have that choice. Now it is an absolute miracle that I'm not a crack addict, to be honest. The things that I saw growing up, or how unsafe that household was. Me and my brother have both really struggled. She did leave my dad, but she left him at 20 when I was 26. So a lot of the damage had already been done. But she did not have the support from her family, even when we were 26. It's because she had our support that she left. So the damage that is being done by people staying because that's what families want, or because we think that our children need two parents, it's not true, because the damage it's doing, look at that, like, it's affected me and my brother finding love. Like, we're both getting older for all of the things, finding love, getting married, having children, and all the complications that brings, all because she was not allowed to be safe. And you look at the females and women in our stories, they're not allowed to choose their husbands, they're not allowed to decide to leave, they're not allowed to choose their safety. My granddad was inappropriate with my mum at points. Her parents still didn't think that was a good enough reason for her to come home. So, and this still to this day is happening in our cultures, and I still hear stories of these type of things in homes, and it's really got to stop, because the damage is so bad. And then what happens? I tried really hard to chase after these unavailable men, but I was pretty clever, wasn't I? Because I wasn't going to marry them. They weren't going to marry me. That was my way of protecting because I would have repeated that pattern. I would have been in an abusive relationship. I was in abusive relationships that were emotionally abusive. So my point being that this is the problem. This is why the cycle continues. And that's why, I share my story and my mum's story, because she wanted to leave, and the damage that that's created, because her family were very well known, very, like, I would say they were like super middle class from India, and there's no girl coming home of that family.
Yeah. So your mum was a cycle breaker, but it took her a while to get there. But that meant that you, as a child, obviously had a lot of trauma. So you talked about reparenting your inner child earlier. What does that actually mean?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So many of us didn't get what we needed as children, right? So we didn't get like unconditional love. We weren't maybe celebrated. Maybe we were like put down sometimes. And those wounds that we carry from the past, we really, really carry in our hearts, right? We carry as part of us. They're a part of us that we take around. So what I started to do as part of my journey was, okay, so you're feeling like that you're ugly, or that you're not good enough or something. And I would connect with myself and go, what part of me is it that feels that way? So for example, when I'm trying to find, like, be in a relationship, and be open to love, I felt very, very scared and I wanted to run away. So I connected with myself and my heart, and I was like, what part of me, and I remember doing this very clearly actually, what part of me is the part that's really scared and wants to run, like it doesn't feel safe. And it was that I've got a picture of myself at this age, like the 7-year-old. And when I connect with her, she's like, well, I'm sorry, I don't like, we don't, how do we know that this man is safe? How do we know that we can trust him? So that's like when you're starting to build that connection with those parts, then you can start to go, you know, and even if you do it in your imagination, like your brain doesn't know the difference between your past memories and your current and your imagination. So you can literally imagine. So I would imagine myself being with that younger version of myself and be like, look, I really think this guy is great and he's going to be really good for us. But if you feel scared and you don't feel happy, then you don't have to, we don't have to carry on, and you can come stay with us. And like I imagine bringing her to the flat that we lived in together. And I remember her saying, but you said the other ones were safe too. Like, so the other men that I had, and it was like, I was really wrong and I'm really sorry that I did that to you. So it's all of these parts. But as I've got older and as I've done more work on myself, it is the other parts of us as well. The 20-year-old that, you know, had that inappropriate encounter at work, or, you know, the 15-year-old that failed her exam. You know, it's all the versions of us that are within us, all the parts of us that are trying to protect us. So our unconscious mind, our subconscious mind, it's just trying to protect us, trying to keep us safe. But sometimes it's trying to protect us from being loved. It's stopping us from receiving. And that's a real thing. Like when you've experienced trauma, you don't feel safe to receive. You feel safe. For me, I could give to everyone, but I couldn't receive it myself. And part of this healing journey has been really about opening my heart to receive love, because I wasn't just cutting myself off from the bad toxic people, I was also cutting myself off from the good ones. And it's like doing that inner child work is so powerful, to be able to allow those parts of you to stand down so they stop protecting you, and actually you can allow that love in.
Okay, so if someone is at home right now going, okay, well, I want to start doing some inner child work, what would they do and how would they maybe start doing that themselves?
Yep. So I would get a picture of yourself below 7, put her in a frame, put her on a mirror in your room, and like talk to her every day. Like, how are you? How are you feeling? Like start to connect with them in that way. There's great inner child meditations online that you can do if you want to do something more visual. And the other thing you can do is just literally when you're feeling an emotion, like you're noticing you're feeling sad or you're feeling lonely, you're feeling shameful, is actually just going, okay, so how do I feel? Where is it in my body? And then just thinking, like, how old am I? Is it today, or is it a past feeling? So our emotion body is very much linked to that part of us as well.
Yeah.
And it's like just learning to be the parent to those parts, and actually creating a more loving, nourishing relationship with yourself. Like I was talking to one of my clients today, and she's like, oh, you know, I'm just avoiding doing this thing, and then I just have a complete go at myself because I'm avoiding doing it because I'm scared, and it's really great because I need to get it done. And I'm like, okay, so if someone you loved, a small child, you know, you wanted them to do something, are you going to shout at them to do it? Like, isn't that how we were parented? She's like, yeah. It's like, you wouldn't shout at them, would you? And she's like, no. So I was like, could you please talk to yourself, to that part of you that's like, I don't want to do it, I'm too scared. Could you talk to that part of you like with love and with encouragement? And then when you do that, magical things.
So obviously, you know, I've spoken about my story on the podcast, and, you know, my trauma is really kind of, there's some childhood trauma, but most of mine comes from, you know, the rape at university. And yeah, so like, what does it feel like to be safe in your body then? So we go through traumas like that, right? And obviously that for me was 21 years ago. I've done a lot of work on it. I've like spoken to her and all this kind of stuff. But like for people out there who are listening, what does it feel like to be safe? What does it mean to be safe in your body?
So I think it's a real journey to begin that process, because where you went through something so horrific, the disassociation, the freeze, the intensity in your nervous system. So I'm guessing even you've done so much healing and then you're like, fucking hell, it's still there.
Yeah.
Because it's still like it's really in there, and that's where I've really found like somatic therapy work and nervous system repair. So you can go to the edge of the discomfort of the pain of what you experience, but then you can notice how actually I'm really safe as well. So something that I do now is a regular practice, because to be honest, it's like I hadn't quite caught up that I was actually safe now. So actually allowing yourself to be really present in the moment and looking around where you are, like your bedroom, the garden, the, you know, that orientation of safety, and then really noticing how that feels in your body. And like I've had a lot of crying happen as part of that coming home to myself, you know, because I never was safe my whole life. So it's so emotional to go, I'm actually safe now. And I can only honestly say that that's been a more recent thing, because I actually slowed down enough to notice that my life is safe now and I'm not in that situation anymore. But when you're changing so much and you're doing lots of things and you get busy like running a business and things, you don't sometimes slow in to take in that, oh, I'm actually am, and really noticing what that feels like, what that smells like, what you see, you know, and having that. And really recommend for like that somatic nervous system repair. It's really powerful.
Yeah. So things like the EFT and the tapping.
So actually, like there's therapists out there that do somatic therapy that will focus on your nervous system repair. So they will do things like IFS, which is integrated family systems, and then other parts of our little somatic practices that help you to come back to your body. So yeah, EFT is great, but there's other things that you can do, like parts of your brain that you can touch, and you know, there's other things that you can do that bring you back to it, and so it allows you to feel like, oh my god, I am safe in this moment.
Wow. So how do you work with clients at the moment?
So I do a number of different things. I do like one-to-one. I do like two different ways of working with people. So I'm helping people with transforming their trauma. So whether that be changing their relationship with themselves, finding love, and then more recently that has moved into a lot of people coming to me because they want to turn what they've been through into their purpose and into their work and into a business. So I do that one-to-one, and then I also have masterminds where I help people with purpose. And I have like a signature course which is actually changing next month, which is like all the steps of how to get better with healing. And yeah, I do lots of things, my events, and I'm always coming up with new ideas. Like I've decided to do like I really want to have some hearts happiness weddings, I've decided. So I think I'm going to do like a relationship mastermindy thing.
Oh, wow. That's
Yeah.
exciting. So let me
Yeah.
ask you one final question. Is your heart happy?
Yes, it really is. I feel, I'm going to cry now, but I feel very, very blessed that this little girl that went through so much, you know, sorry, I'm going to cry, but, you know, was able to create this incredible life. And it's an absolute like gift and honor to be able to help other people to do that too.
Yeah, that's so beautiful.
Thanks. Sorry, I didn't realize I was going to cry.
No, it's all good. Listen, that's what we're here for, right? So listen, if somebody wants to get in contact with you, work with you, find you, can you tell us all your socials and your websites? How do we get hold of you, my love?
Yeah, of course. So you can follow me on Instagram at not W, hearts underscore happiness. So yeah, I'm on there. And at the moment, I am taking on new one-to-one clients just for the moment. So that's the thing that I have available. And then I also have my website, www.heartshappiness.co.uk, and you can search for my podcast, Hearts Happiness, everywhere as well, or email me at manpreet@heartshappiness.co.uk.
It's been such a pleasure having you on the podcast today. And I'm so excited. You really are a true brown girl rising. You're there helping other brown women, women of all cultures, rise, you know, heal their inner child, reparent that inner child, and become the women or the woman that she wants to be. So thank you for doing what you do. And thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been so wonderful chatting with you. And I love what you do and the difference that you're making in the world as well.
Thank you so much, guys. This was Manpreet. I'm Urvashi, and I will see you on the next podcast.